Spiritual gaslighting is probably the most hypocritical thing I can think of. But nonetheless, we're talking about it today because not only does it exist, but it's rampant, especially in certain circles. If you've ever been made to feel like you're wrong for your beliefs, or that someone else is somehow better than you because they have a greater, stronger faith, you may have experienced spiritual gaslighting. But those aren't the only ways that spiritual gaslighting will come up. So today I wanted to share with you 9 spiritual gaslighting tactics to look out for. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Common Ego community. My name is Christina, and on this channel we talk about spirituality, self-development, and the emotional impact of toxic relationships. Today we're talking about something that's kind of like the intersection of those 3 topics. We're talking about spiritual gaslighting. So as a quick refresher, gaslighting is the act of manipulating a person to doubt his or her perception, experience, or understanding of events. So for the purposes of this video, I want to define what I'm talking about a little bit here. And when I say spiritual gaslighting, what I'm talking about is the type of gaslighting that you will find in spiritual communities. In most cases, it's people using spiritual concepts to gaslight another person. And the one thing that all of these tactics have in common is that they are used for control. Maybe to control a specific person, maybe to control a community. And sometimes these tactics are used for image control or damage control, when somebody's doing things that they shouldn't be doing and they need to prevent other people from believing the truth. So the first spiritual gaslighting tactic I want to talk about is something I'm going to call the guilty advocate. Now, this is when somebody advocates very strongly, very vocally against something, and they will call out anyone who's doing this thing, but yet behind closed doors, they're probably the worst offenders. However, because they're so strong in voicing their opinions against this thing, they're probably the last people you would think who would be doing it. And if they get caught doing it, a good defense for them would be, how dare you? How dare you accuse me of doing this thing that you know how I feel about this thing. How dare you accuse me of doing it? So what they're doing there is they're putting you in a defensive position where you have to defend yourself for accusing them of something that they're actually doing. And this is something that we'll see in spiritual communities around many topics, and cheating is one of them. So somebody might talk about how adultery is a sin, and that person may call out all these other sinners and what they do and how they deserve what they get. But sometimes the people who are most vocal against something are actually guilty of it themselves. So the next spiritual gaslighting tactic that I want to call attention to is the devil made me do it defense. Now, it doesn't always come off exactly this way. The person doesn't always say, well, the devil made me do it, and actually expect you to believe that. But they will imply that that's something that they would never do themselves, and they must have been susceptible to some kind of negative energy. Maybe it was even your negative energy that made them do it. Another terrible spiritual gaslighting tactic is victim shaming and blaming. And this is not always from the perpetrator. There are plenty of examples where entire communities have gotten together and shamed a victim for speaking out about abuse. So this comes in many forms. They could say that the person was somewhere that they shouldn't have been, that maybe they shouldn't have trusted this person alone, like they should have known better, or maybe they'll imply or outright say that the person was dressed inappropriately so they deserved what they got. And this, of course, happens outside of spiritual communities too. But it is very common in spiritual communities, especially when the spiritual leader or somebody who's highly respected in the community is actually the perpetrator. So the third type of spiritual gaslighting that I want to call attention to is questioning somebody's faith based on their ability or willingness to forgive. So let's just say that somebody has done something that requires your forgiveness, and you choose not to forgive that person. Maybe in the moment, maybe forever. You may hear something like, if your faith was true, then you would forgive this person. You may hear Bible verses. You may hear quotes from spiritual leaders that imply that you should forgive. That forgiveness is divine. And my position on forgiveness is that it really can set you free. When you're ready, when you're at that point where you're ready to forgive, you can actually lift that weight off of yourself. The weight of negative energy, the weight of bad feelings towards someone else. Forgiveness is really a gift that you give to yourself. But someone else does not get to decide when, who, or how you forgive. That is entirely up to you. Another form of spiritual gaslighting is using partial truths to spread half-truths or outright lies. So with this, someone may take something that is true, that is an undisputable truth in your faith. And we'll see this sometimes with Bible verses, but it can also be done in any other religion with any sacred text. And it can also be done with quotes from highly respected people within that faith. So how this works is if you believe this, then you must believe that. If you don't believe that, then you're questioning this. And because this is the indisputable truth, then you must be wrong or you must not have the kind of faith that you say you have. And especially if you're really dealing with a narcissist, if you start questioning the half-truths or the things that don't seem to be true at all, the things that can be disputed, the person you're speaking with is going to retreat back to the things that you would actually never dispute and make it seem like that's what you're disputing. Another incredibly common form of spiritual gaslighting is telling people of other faiths that they are wrong or just blatantly mocking their faith. And these things usually go hand in hand. And unfortunately, it's so common that I see it often in the comments of some of my videos, and you'll probably find it in the comments of this video. And while I absolutely understand that we all want to believe that we are on the right path spiritually, faith is something that is incredibly personal. And it's at the basis of who we are. Even if you don't have faith in anything, even if you're atheist, that belief is very central to who you are as a person. And telling someone they're wrong and or making fun of their religion or their beliefs is absolutely an attack on who they are. Even when it comes from a good place, trying to forcefully take away someone's beliefs or change their beliefs challenges their free will. So another type of spiritual gaslighting is the God complex. And this is when somebody believes that they're better than other people for whatever reason. And in spiritual communities, this usually happens when we're dealing with a highly narcissistic spiritual leader or somebody who has a high-ranking position in that spiritual community. And they use their perceived position of power to help them avoid responsibility for any wrongdoing. But when we strip things down, regardless of what your faith is, most of us believe that spiritually, we're the same. We are all spiritual beings, and one is not better than the other. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what car you drive or what position you have in your community. So another type of spiritual gaslighting I want to talk about is shaming people for their feelings. And this usually comes up with anger, and it can also come up with sadness. So maybe you're angry at somebody, and maybe you have every right to be angry. So someone who is gaslighting you in this way and shaming you for your feelings may say or imply that because of your faith, you should not be feeling this anger or sadness or whatever it is that you're feeling. They may even imply that because you're feeling this, it means that you've got a lot of work to do on you. You've got to do that shadow work. You've got to heal that inner child. You shouldn't be feeling so much anger. Here's the kicker. Usually, when somebody's doing this, when somebody's shaming you for your feelings, they have a personal interest in what you're feeling. So you might be actually angry at them. You might have those negative feelings towards the person who's trying to shame you for them. So it would be very convenient for them if you were to let go of those feelings. So another way that somebody may gaslight in spiritual communities is by shutting down people's thoughts or opinions that are not aligned with that person's agenda. So if somebody is talking about something or maybe even questioning something that that person said, especially in front of a group, this person is very likely to shut them down, to not let them speak, to not actually let what might very well be the truth come to light, come to the surface. Essentially, when somebody wants you to believe whatever it is that they're selling, whatever it is that they want you to believe, they're going to try their best to filter the information that gets through. So if it doesn't fit their agenda, they're not going to let it through. Now, this type of spiritual gaslighting is often rooted in fear. It's the fear of allowing other people to think for themselves. Because if other people think for themselves, then they won't need this spiritual leader or this person to tell them how to think and feel. So if you are involved in a spiritual community where you feel like you can't speak your mind, where you feel like there are certain things you just can't talk about, this may be going on. You may be experiencing this type of gaslighting because really we're all just people and we're all navigating this world in our own way. And we rely on our faith to keep us grounded. But if you feel like you're walking on eggshells in whatever community you're a part of, then it may not be the best community for you, whether there's gaslighting going on or not. And before I wrap this up, I just want to add that I'm not only talking about spiritual leaders here. I know I've mentioned spiritual leaders a few times, but they're not the only ones. Although they can do a lot of damage, they're not the only ones who can be guilty of spiritual gaslighting. You may get this from friends or from family members, from members of the same congregation you're in. You may experience spiritual gaslighting from anyone, really. And if you're around someone who's getting you to question your faith or yourself, your beliefs that are very core to who you are, there's a chance that there's gaslighting going on, especially if it creates resistance within you. Now, we can all change our minds and our perspectives, and you could even change your faith. This is going back to that free will. We all have the ability and the right to change our minds. But if you feel like you're being forced or manipulated to do that, to change your faith, change your beliefs, that's when there's cause for concern. So I hope you found this video helpful. And if you did, please go ahead and hit that like button. And I will see you next time.